Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap Who's Number 122, headlined by Victor Hugo versus Nick Rodriguez, also Mica Galvão, Kenta Iwamoto, a bunch of other great matches on that card. At the end of the show, we're going to talk very briefly about the second European, African trials and Middle Eastern trials. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Simon.
How you doing, Simon?
I'm all right. Allergies got me a little...
As per usual, I think you haven't been on the show in a while. Always love when you're on, but back-to-back times you're like, yeah, my voice is a little bit scratchy.
No. Last time I couldn't talk. Yeah. This time I was like, hey, man, my allergies are kind of getting me. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, we're good. So
we'll be fine. Who's
Number 1 is great. We don't have a ton of news, but we do have some news. In big news, we have Pit Submission Fighting, which is the new karate combat event organization. I forget
promotion.
That's what I'm looking for. We have more matchups that have been announced for their Mexico City card. We have Paulo Miao versus Ricky Simone, which is
a matchup we've all been dying to see.
It's an interesting matchup. It'll be interesting. We'll talk more about that as it comes. That is February 23rd, so that is not this week. That is the following week. Probably going to go Paulo Miao on that one. Is it Joao or Paulo? It is Joao Miao on that one of the Miaos. And other news that I think is really cool, Polaris has announced that they are now doing more like pro-am tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Polaris is run kind of like Kasai does, and a lot of organizations will do. They run like, Finishers does it as well nowadays. They run these opens, and you can essentially win your spot from one of the divisions in the open onto the main card or into a bracket. And it gives an opportunity, because for years, it gives you an opportunity to be on one of the big promotion shows. I think Max Hansen actually gets on Who's Number 1 this week as a result of winning one of those. I think it's awesome. It's kind of the same thing that ADCC Trials does, where you win this big tournament, an open tournament, you get your spot, you prove your worth to get on one of these main cards. And because, again, we're kind of from in the before times, it was sometimes really hard for athletes to be able to get noticed or to be able to kind of break into those big tournaments. And so I've pushed for years and years and talked about how great it is to have organizations that do sort of a trials or a qualifier to give athletes that really think they're on the level an opportunity to showcase their skills and get noticed and get on those big shows. So I love that Polaris is doing more of these. They've now announced more pro-ams across Europe, which is phenomenal. Again, more athletes that are getting familiar with the Polaris rule set and getting an opportunity to compete on that big show is very, very exciting.
It's also kind of like the story of the come up, a fight to win, if you think about it. Like, how many guys did you start following that were purple belts, brown belts, working their way up? You saw
world champion. Yeah. Sam Nagai, I think we first saw him on Fight to Win, and then just won a world title this year.
Yep.
Like, there are plenty of guys like Josh Esneros.
Yep.
Fight to Win submission of the year 2017 or I think 2018 with that TP choke at purple belt, goes on to win world titles.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was so long
ago.
It
was. And that was
again, now look where
he is. And there's been plenty of guys that have. So again, I love these organizations giving up and coming grapplers the opportunity to go and showcase their skills and prove that they're on the level, because nowadays it is not the excuses of 10 years ago where it's like there was more organizations that have it on the line. Polaris is just the next in a great line of organizations to do that, and it's really cool that they're going to have some more pro-ams across Europe, and I'm ecstatic to see the athletes that come out of them. They've done these before. They've done qualifiers before.
But it's still a young enough sport where the barrier of entry is still pretty minimal, so you can go on one of these small rinky-dink promotions and then real quickly get noticed after, I don't know, insert viral clip B because you got a really good bite on a heel hook and you jacked somebody up.
Right. You can go an IBJJF Open and then do something crazy. And everyone's like, who is that? Like Francisco Lowe jumping over the closed guard over Oliver Towns. You're like, all right, well, I got to know who that guy is now. Yeah. And then Francisco Lowe in a year has blown up and been on a ton of stuff. So, again, I love that Polaris is doing this. As far as other news, there was something else really important that I am totally forgetting.
Craig Jones versus Philly Fresh.
That's happening as well. That's also on.
That's the headliner for that card.
Yeah, that's on Karate Combat as well. We'll talk about that next week. Craig Jones, I think. Other Craig Jones news. He finally just publicly went, "Yeah, I'm on droids." Like, this is specific.
That's not news.
It's a little bit news.
That's not news at all.
We've all known it because Craig Jones has been very public for a while now. But I do actually really appreciate him making an Instagram post of like, "Hey, this is exactly what I am taking for my match on the Fight Pass Invitational. This is what I'm doing. This is not a joke. This is actually what I'm doing. Like, and then in Reddit, actually, he posted, he was like, yeah, man, I think that the sport needs a larger degree of transparency for this kind of stuff. If people are going to do it, they need to do it safely. It's very funny to have him post that because these are conversations that I've had with other guys, other top-level guys before.
I don't think he's doing this out of any sort of newly found sense of transparency. It's just good content. And Craig Jones is really, really good at social media.
He is very, very good at social media. But again, I as a journalist, and the biggest air quotes possible there for the sport, I really do appreciate, especially with the prevalence of more and more young athletes getting on steroids, there being experienced athletes that have also gone on that road and like letting them know, like, hey, here's what I'm doing, so that they can make the decisions to do it safely or to do it to whatever extent that they want to do that with their bodies. And it's not this behind closed doors, quiet thing. It's a little more in the open. If it's going to happen, it is happening. It's very prevalent in the sport. At least there's some more people talking about it, and it doesn't become this thing that you have to do without guidance and without, proper medical protocol. I appreciate that. If guys are going to do it, I want them to do it safely, and I want to see the wildest, craziest shit I can see as a fan of the sport. And I understand it's very polarizing on either side of that, but I do appreciate Craig Jones publicly, one of the biggest guys to ever come out and go. Like, no one has ever done that in jiu-jitsu, and I do really appreciate him making great content, but also actually doing that.
Drugs win the drug war. More at 6:30.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't think I have any other news. Let's get right into it. Also ADCC Open was this weekend, and Zach and I went down and commentated Copa Elite 3. Both events were great. If you get a chance to catch the replay for Copa Elite 3, it was a lot of fun. Grappling Rewind co-host and founder Josh Weinstock was on that card. I got a chance to commentate his matches. It was honestly, it's always a phenomenal time going down there to Manassas, Virginia, in the Salisbury Center to commentate that event. Had a lot of fun doing it. It is always a really, really cool opportunity. It was cool to have Zach and Josh there this time to go, and we really have a great team on Grappling Rewind.
Hey, and they're coming to Dundalk, so
yeah,
way less of a trip next year.
Dude, I love commentating when they're local. That's like their.
They did one in Dundalk, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was 15 minutes from the house, in and out, a couple hours. We did the pro event. Brian Guevara from Standard won that one, and it was awesome. But this was their pro card down in Virginia, and it was great. Anything else, Simon? Any news?
Mackenzie during Fight Week.
Oh, yeah, Mackenzie Dern's fighting this week as well.
All the dudes on Instagram that be like, oh, look at that. There's a female fighter that Yeah.
So that's happening this week. She's fighting Amanda Lemos, she said.
Yep.
That'll be a fun fight.
It might be a fun fight. It might be a trash fight.
It might be. So
it's also on kind of short notice, so it might be a trash fight.
Yeah, you never know.
But I think Lemos is also the woman who got standing arm triangled by Jessica Andrade.
Maybe.
I'm like 99.9% sure, yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with you on MMA knowledge, as I've learned many years ago.
If that submission happened to her just less than a few years ago, I kind of would like to see what Mackenzie could do.
Yeah, Mackenzie's just, again, for everything, phenomenal grappler. So that happens this week as well. Moving on to the recap. You got any other news, Simon?
I got allergies. That's it.
Yeah. Moving on to the recap of who's number 1, 22. Simon, where do you want to start on this card? Do you want to start with the main event, move from there, or where do you want to go?
Start with the main event.
Okay. Main event here is Victor Hugo defeating Nicky Rod via decision. This is the third time that they have met up. Nicky Rod even though Victor Hugo has beat him the 2 earlier times, Nicky Rod was still a pretty heavy favorite going into this matchup. And on the show last week, we were talking about, why we thought that was. And I was like, okay, I think his passing's improved. I think the dynamism of his game has improved. I think all of these aspects have improved. And I think that he will have the right game plan going into the match with Victor Hugo to get it done. I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was super wrong the entire time. Victor Hugo
is just too good.
He's just, I hate that is the analysis we have, but it's really, Victor Hugo didn't at any point make any deviation from his game or any big opportunity for Rodriguez. Didn't make a single mistake in this match that he wasn't able to very quickly remedy and pull Nick Rodriguez back into his game plan.
He pulled almost immediately, from the opening you see Nicky Rod kind of like feign a shot, and Hugo pulls immediately and basically never left his back for the next 10 out of 15 minutes.
Yeah. And when you said never left his back, like he had his shoulders.
But was in control the whole time.
Yeah. He had his shoulders pinned on the mat. There was one sequence that kind of illustrates this the best, is the one kind of time Nick Rodriguez almost got around his guard. He used the body lock pass. He starts to get back to Victor Hugo. And then if you've watched Nick Rodriguez over the years, he does a really, really nice shucking back take from the body lock pass, and he will take most people's back with it. Victor Hugo stiff arms Nicky Rod, and then normally what you'll do is you'll get to your side and you'll push on one leg and you'll push him down. Nick Rodriguez will use you pushing against him to shuck across and then take your back. And you saw the commentary start talking about this, and you saw Victor Hugo never daylight the top of the shoulder far enough for Nick Rodriguez to make that jump, and then immediately flatten his back down and push Nick Rodriguez away, stiff arm him, and get back to the guard.
Also, anatomically, I never really realized it, but Hugo's arms are just kind of like...
Dude, he has...
Like, have you ever had someone that's maybe like an inch out of proportion? So it's not like they look like this physically imposing figure, but at no point could that stiff arm, as soon as he locked out his arms, at no point could Nicky get around that.
Nope.
And it's funny that you mentioned commentary made a very good point of sort of furthering the Nicky Rodriguez story arc of, oh, this is Nick Rodriguez with technique. This is Nick Rodriguez doing jiu-jitsu now. And it was like, with all that extra offense, he just could not even sniff to get past his guard. He didn't pass until the last 4 minutes of the fight.
I think about 4 minutes left in the
match.
match.
It was 3:55, and I was like, oh, he finally passed his guard, and then he immediately regained half guard.
And Victor Hugo went, not quite.
Yeah.
We had some really great offense from Victor Hugo, too, because sometimes these matches can get pretty stalematey, and it was definitely a slower match than I would have liked, but Victor Hugo and Rodriguez kept it going. Victor Hugo would continuously pull Nick Rodriguez back into the guard, but I think at 3 different points in the match, he goes for an omoplata sweep, and at one point, he goes for a straight-up teepee armbar from the guard, and gets Nick Rodriguez pretty deep in that armbar, and then we see basically Jay Rodriguez's armbar defense from Nick Rodriguez.
Yeah, so on that one, it was kind of like, because Hugo had him in his guard from basically the beginning of the match, you sort of see Victor continuously reaching up, just not even breaking his posture necessarily, but swiping the back of his head, And I don't know if that lulled Nicky Rod into this sense of comfort of being there, but he finally used one of those reaches to pin that his forearm against his chest, and he used that to get the bite on the armbar. And that was probably the most meaningful offense of that first few minutes. And you saw at the 10-minute mark, he had the first judges are leaning towards, and then from there, he never really lost control.
Yeah, that was really the story of the match. So that was the match. That's how it went. It wasn't really surprising. The thing that surprised me most was late in the match, we saw Nick Rodriguez go for a toe hold, and it looked deep. And we've seen Nick Rodriguez do this before on Gordon Ryan when he allegedly broke Gordon's foot. And we know he has a good toe hold. We know he can rip and grip it when he gets there. That was the closest thing Nick Rodriguez had to really, really strong offense. And I'm curious. It's a weird curiosity because Victor Hugo is one of the best big guy leg lockers in the world. So it's I don't know if necessarily tactically it's the right decision for Nick Rodriguez to go fight the legs, because Victor Hugo has so many high level. I mean, look at Cyborg, Eric Muniz, look at the guys that he's beat by knee bars, essentially. That's not probably a battle you want to get into, but that is the best when Nick Rodriguez went for that. And he went for it quick, and he didn't continue to go for it. But I would be curious with how much better Nick Rodriguez's footlock defense has gotten, if potentially in that match, had he gone for more of those, if he would have, I'm going to say calling it get lucky, if he would have gotten lucky there and been able to break Victor Hugo's foot, would that have been a better strategy potentially versus trying to pass for the duration of the match and being unable to, because Victor Hugo has really great proportions to stop that, and one of the best, if not the best guard game for big guys in the sport.
Well, you see throughout the night, actually, a lot of guys, it almost seemed like a lot of the competitors came into the night with set game plans for their opponents. Their game is very heavy on this, therefore my plan A is going to be to go forward and do that. But it did not necessarily seem like those game plans were tactical or tailored towards the rule set. Because it almost looked like Nick Rodriguez was trying to beat him in an IBJJF match. And at no point...
Yeah, a little bit.
After the 5-minute and the 10-minute mark, you've already had both your live scoring updates saying that your bottom man's... the judges are leaning towards him. And at no point did Nick really change it up necessarily. He was just continuously trying to pass. And then, like you said, that one toe hold attempt towards the end was basically one of his first submission attempts, it looked like. And then at that point, Hugo ended up mounting him, and that was kind of like the oxygen just got sucked out of there. It's like, dude, there's nothing left you could really do at that point.
It is really interesting. It's one of the things that we've kind of highlighted and really championed for Nick Rodriguez over the years is that regardless of how it's going, that dude's game plan is bulletproof. Like, he's going to hit you with whatever his game plan was for that match, for the whole match. And especially earlier in his career, is one of the things where it's like, hey, man, he's just not going to be put off from what he's doing, and you have to be able to stop it the whole time, and really no one could. It is interesting now that he is more of a known quantity. Guys really know what he does well. Guys really know, like, okay, this is kind of how to deal with him. Now he has more technique. He's doing more jiu-jitsu. It's interesting that maybe this has been an interesting matchup with Victor Hugo where, that not inability but unwillingness to change the game plan potentially is something that's hurting him in the Victor Hugo matchup. And it's really interesting because Nick Rodriguez doesn't lose that often, but to Victor Hugo, I think he's the only guy that's beat him 3 times. Potentially the only guy he's faced 3 times.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I couldn't remember his record with Pena. Like, I know.
Didn't he beat him? Didn't he?
Yeah, didn't he? No, I'm thinking somebody else. Never mind.
Yeah. So that was the match. Simon, do you have any more pieces on the match? Anything else you saw that was interesting?
No, just a little too late, almost the entire time from Nicky Rod. Like, I think, I don't know, if he had gotten one of those back attempts, then maybe his plan A would have worked out better, would have created something more. But Hugo was just too good.
He played it perfectly, and like the one opportunity that Nick Rodriguez would have had to take his back, Victor Hugo just went, nope, I know exactly what you're going to do. I'm going to stuff it and print it. You're going to go back into my guard. We're going to play this game that we're doing the whole time. It was again, beautifully played by Victor Hugo and wins a very commanding decision over Nick Rodriguez here. It's honestly, unfortunately, not a matchup I'm kind of interested in seeing for another probably 2 years.
Unless we see it at ADCC.
Well, any matchup is a matchup I want to see at ADCC.
Yeah.
There's not a matchup at ADCC that I don't want to see. But yeah, it's been kind of like how the last one went a little bit. So moving on to Mica Galvão versus Kenta Iwamoto. Mica Galvão gets a submission, a rear naked choke, which I really wish I had a better angle on the camera here for this finish over Kenta. God damn. Kenta's tough.
Yeah.
And B, Mica Galvão is so good.
It's so much fun to watch him right now, especially we saw him 2 years ago. We saw
he almost won ADCC versus Cabertolo.
Yes.
Yeah, in the finals.
But the evolution of his game, and we've probably seen more Mica in the last, years. I haven't seen Caden, I don't know how long, because one is kind of funny with all their matchmaking, things like that.
Yeah. We saw Cade a couple weeks ago.
All right.
I burst Tommy Langaker in the rematch.
Oh, okay. I just tuned out that
It
fight
was a very, very good match. I enjoyed it very much.
I bet. That being said, Mica now looks like, that's that dude. That's that Ken Griffey Jr., that's that Kobe coming up. That's that next guy on his way up. And we get to watch him right now become that guy. And that matchup, Kenta, like you said, was tough. But every takedown defense led to, you are going to do this almost flawlessly, but you're going to leave your hand right here. I will then take that hand, I will pin it to my chest, and when we go down, I'm going to use that for my bite. And after using that for my bite on the initial triangle attempt, I'm actually going to use that as an arm lock attempt and then make you do the J-Rod armbar defense about 17 times as I flow effortlessly between submission attempts.
It was truly a really, really impressive performance. Because, I like both these guys. I'm going to say that up front here. Kenta is a really, really good wrestler. And I think it was on display here because Mica Galvão, I don't think is just going to let himself get taken down. He seemed less concerned with straight up defending the wrestling match and was more happy to like counter, and every counter he hit on Kenta.
The first 3 takedowns, he wasn't even sprawling at all. His hips continually turned in, not away.
He would immediately go. He went for the armbar. He went for that guillotine. He ended up in mount on it. He went for another triangle attempt there. All 3 were just like, okay, Kenta is getting him down, but then immediately in ADCC rules, which I think is where Mica's eyes are kind of pointed to, isn't going to score that, because if you take someone down at ADCC, you are required to clear any submission attempt and then stabilize them for 3 seconds. If there is a submission attempt that's happening in that timeline and you can either get up or turn them over, then they don't score that. And so it was really interesting to watch. I'm curious if Mica was potentially using this as like a training of game plan going into ADCC, where there's going to be really strong wrestlers, of going, okay, guys can take me. That's possible. If I, make a sequence, or, I, for some reason, get taken down, being able to chain those attacks into stuff it seemed to be what he was looking for in this matchup the entire time. Not a single point in time was Kenta able to take control of this match. Even on the takedown attempts, Mica was just immediately on his arm, immediately on his neck, immediately on something else, and just executed this absolutely flawlessly.
So it wasn't until about like 10 minutes in that Kenta actually secured a takedown that would have scored.
Yeah.
At that point, he'd already done all the damage, though. Like, Mica was up. He had 7,000 sub attempts at that point. But Mika's takedown was actually a little impressive. Like, it wasn't...
Yeah.
It seemed pretty clumsy, but I really liked... He went for kind of the lazy judo foot sweep on that lead foot. The lead foot misses, and he just, like... takes out that back foot that was trailing. He stumbles Kenta over, and what the heck just happened to me sort of an idea. And again, at that point, you just see Mica mechanically flowing from, all right, I'll take him. Like, it's that old Eddie Bravo or on Joe Rogan podcast, oh, you do this, I do that, like that kind of, but it was actually playing out in real life.
Yeah, it was.
And you got to see him effortlessly just flow through submission attempt to submission attempt, that by the time he got the actual submission, it was almost anticlimactic. There was a bad camera angle on it.
Yeah. You couldn't tell. You could sort of just see that, and there is a neat hand fight happening there, but it's really hard to see, and it's hard to describe because I don't want to get it wrong. But it's basically, he beats him to the choke, he gets under, he swims the hand under the neck, and then just like punches it over, and the choke's there. But yeah, he didn't belly him out. He was just so far under his neck there that he was just able to finish Kenta before, like, the next sequence of that, which you'll usually see, which is the sprawl and turnover and like that fight for the hooks to come out.
But he had beaten him so thoroughly up to that point.
You didn't need
it's like
that.
There wasn't really much left.
Yeah, it was a wildly impressive performance. One thing that I picked out, I talked about you in the pre-show, was you can see there's one moment in one of the armbar attempts that Mica hits over the top where he is belly down on the armbar. And it's the armbar you'll do kind of, it's not a Troy bar, but it's the Jujugatame, like the judo over the shin over the neck one. And usually what you'll do is in the gi, you will grab the skirt and you'll flip the opponent over for a split second. I think at like the 4:34 mark left in the match. You see Mica have this armbar and you see him reach out to grab where Kenta's skirt of the gi would be. But he missed, and he pulls his hand back and immediately goes to the belly down into the armbar. But it was a really funny moment of like, that's a gi. You do this like a gi technique. Even with no gi, you look for the grip really momentarily, like as an instinct. You rarely see it, but I always like to call out when you see it because I find it just hilarious, like when the gi bleeds over into no gi at the highest level. Astonishing, amazing performance. Do you have any other technical pieces on the match before we get into who I want to see Mica against?
No, it's just a really fun match, and that will lead into the exciting matchups that you're conjuring up.
So, in my notes here, I want to see him against Nicky Ryan, mostly because the match was supposed to happen, and also Nicky Ryan is he's really hard to beat. And he's really
until he's not.
Yeah, but the matchup was already booked, so I want to see us check that off because it's like interesting enough. On the other end, I want to see him against Elijah Dorsey because Elijah Dorsey is the last guy to beat Nicky Ryan, and so it's like, okay, that's a matchup I want to see. He was also on the card. I want to see him against JT Torres. I'm
really
curious about like that, like your older champion at this point, who's been there, done that.
Wrestles, comes forward.
Yes, similar stylistic, like not stylistic.
But he's not a folk style wrestler, but he is a very good wrestler for jiu-jitsu.
Yes, very good ADCC wrestler where it's like he will put you down on 2 points and
at that weight class.
He will win the match at that.
Yeah.
Andrew Tackett, because we were supposed to see that match until Tackett got injured after the PJ Barch match. So that's the matchup I want to see. And then I want to see the rematch with Cade Bertolo.
That'd be fun.
Really, the matchups the one I want to see first is Andrew.
I don't want to see the Cade rematch unless it's like ADCC finals. So you want those stakes back.
Look, I want to see it that or for the 1 FC belt.
Especially, okay, yes.
The 1 FC belt would be cool. For 50K on the line or like that 26 pounds of gold.
I don't know. ADCC finals is so much more prestigious than the 1 FC grappling
I
belt.
would absolutely want to see it back. I mean, again, if
for
we
a
see
young
both these guys at ADCC, they're going to be opposite sides of the bracket again. That's the only time we're going to see it at ADCC is opposite sides in the next year, if not 2 years or 4 years from now.
But for someone as great and young as Mica and as great and young as Cade, I want those guys back in that setting that has the most amount of stakes to it.
ADCC World Championship. So again, I hope we see that match. I would love to see who's number one be able to make the Nicky Ryan match because it was booked and be able to make the Andrew Tackett match because it was booked or it was supposed to happen in that tournament. All of those are really, really exciting matches. And then I want to throw JT in there because I think the wrestling style of the way that JT puts people down, I'm really curious to see how Mica gets out of that. One other technical piece that I forgot but I wanted to mention, I think we forget or don't realize how flexible Mica Galvão's hips are in a way that makes his game, I think, astonishingly hard to deal with because I think from an open guard, he can almost, without pulling his foot, touch his foot to his face, just with open hips. There's a couple positions that he does from the ways that he gets the arm bar where I think that his hip flexibility is really, really underrated, and it throws a lot of guys off because he can physically do a bunch of stuff that other people at the weight class cannot do, that you don't see guys do.
He was doing all that midair also, which is probably why I didn't realize it.
Yeah. Go back and look at the guillotine that he turns over Kenta with. The positioning of his foot is almost like he's going to do a Peruvian, but he's just in the guard. And his legs are that high up, almost like he's going to be in a Peruvian. He
was in the guard, actually.
Yeah.
It's like even when he turns him over, you see his foot is actually still in between his legs, but he is all the way up on that neck.
Yeah. Go back and watch. It is a really interesting character. We talked about Victor Hugo being kind of a longer guy. Mica Galvão has some really unusual flexibility that I think throws a lot of guys off, and it's partially why he's able to be so successful in some of these submission attempts because he can create those really great angles in the guard at an angle and at a speed that most people physically are not used to dealing with. So it's interesting to kind of wrinkle to his game and to his just phenomenally special attributes. Moving on to the next crazy matchup on the card, we have Diego Pato Oliveira defeating Dante Leon and taking the lightweight title from Dante Leon. He is now a 2-division champion in who's number one. On the last match as well, Mica Galvão retained his welterweight championship, and Pato takes that 55-pound championship over Dante Leon. He goes up. We thought Dante Leon was going to be able to really physically impose with the weight, and that was absolutely not the case. So this is, again, another one that we knew some of the techniques. We got, I think, some of the techniques in the preview correct, but the way that Pato was able to use his guard on Dante Leon was never able to get past.
No, yeah, they were kind of living in his open guard there for a while, and then he's like, all right, at the point where he actually sweeps him, it's like, oh, you saw Dante actually start to kind of lock down, like, I did not see this coming, it's time to go to, and then at that point, Pato just starts to go to work, and he attempts a chain of leg locks that Dante defends beautifully, but the bite that he gets on the entanglement that actually becomes a finishing sequence was just so deep and so fast. He snatched that on there that it was end game at that point for Dante.
It was really interesting. It was the same guard we've always seen Pato play, where it's like very close, and it's Dante with passing that the exact way you want to pass it, because you don't want to get on your knees because Pato can take you over and he can elevate you because you're stuck on your knees. So Dante was passing kind of from the feet. And then Pato gets underneath him, and he basically pushes him up enough to shoot his hips into single leg X on the out. And you said the back leg, the left leg.
Yes.
When he does that, he is locked so hard on the foot with, like, I think I forgot and on the pre-show I forgot, this grip, the grip he has, it's either called a pretzel grip or a butterfly grip, and someone corrected me like a year and a half ago in the DMs on the show.
They'll probably DM you again.
If you know what it is, please let me know. I forgot. It's but Pato grabs that grip, and you see the camera, great camera angle, you can see his face, and it's freeze framed, and he's just like ripping, and you realize, oh, he knows he has this because he's so high up on the hip. And I watched this in slow motion. The second that he gets Dante up in a single leg X and is locked, Dante has already made the angle. Dante has already begun to high leg out, or like to running man out of it. And because Pato is so fast and has such a hard bite, even with Dante being on the leg as they are still going up in the air and pushing the knee through, it doesn't matter. So it was interesting that we talked about kind of the weight of Dante being, and the strength of him being a big attribute in this match. I didn't really expect Pato to be that much quicker in him in this match. And I think that was maybe not the deciding factor, but definitely what led to the submission is just the speed that Pato could enter that outside single leg X on the back leg. Dante was physically unable to get away from him fast enough to be even able to defend or get his other leg involved or anything else.
Yeah, like I was saying before, every leg lock attempt prior to that, Dante defended beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
He got out of, I actually lost count. I didn't even make notes over how many sequences he was able to get out of, and then he got re-entangled and he got out of it. That last entanglement, though, like you were saying, as soon as he got that bite on that single leg X, you almost see when Dante stands up, his foot is almost basically positioned immediately where Pato wants him, so that he can just,
Pato
whatever that grip is, it is locked in at that point, and at no point does it even budge, move, compromise.
No.
Doesn't matter if he's in that running man stance or not. That was endgame at that point.
Yeah. I was also really impressed early in the match before the submission that Pato was able to kind of sweep Dante over and force Dante to his back. Like Dante, it seemed that halfway in that sweep, maybe kind of accepted to go to his guard and establish the guard he wanted to play if he was going to get turned over.
Yeah, he like locked down immediately. Like it looked like it. Oh shit! What am I gonna?
It was. I watched it a couple times. I couldn't quite tell in the sequence like what I wanted to infer from that. But it was really interesting because you could see Pato get underneath him, elevate, turn, and get under Dante's hips to the side to force Dante to kind of select which side he was going to fall to. And then Pato was able to come up, start working his own passing, and eventually get to the feet. But I think that was, in this match, I think Pato was winning it throughout. And I was really not expecting, you listen to last week's show, kind of how my dynamism of the match, how I thought it was going to go. Pato was on his way to winning a decision here, and then was able to get the submission. I think that was wildly impressive for Diego. It was really interesting, and again, huge fan of Dante. Dante's one of my favorite dudes. Got a chance to interview him before. In the commentary, was talking about Pato's comments before the match, and he was talking about, Dante keeps talking about, going up to welterweight after this, and he goes, Dante's really focused on his own division, and it was interesting that was coming from Pato, who also in this division is going up in weight.
Yeah.
It was just a really funny, I don't know what I want to infer from it, but I thought it was an interesting comment from a guy also going up to, above his division. And it was just interesting. Nothing more than that, but it is really cool to see Pato now be a 2-division champion. There's a bunch of guys for him to fight at welterweight. There's a bunch of guys for him to face at lightweight. This is definitely one I think we're going to see again. I think Dante, I'm curious with this loss if Dante is going to stay at 55 and look to get back in this mix to get this belt back, or if he's going to move up and potentially have a match and then look to take on Mica Galvão. I think Mica Galvão is going to be a really tough match. It's a rematch. They've had that match before, but I think Mica is absolutely not the same guy he was when they fought a couple of years ago. I'm interested in seeing it again, but I think it's a really tough matchup for Dante.
Yeah, it's also it is early in the year, but you have to start figuring how many months out are these ADCC matchups. Like how many of these guys are going to be scaling back, not doing as many super fights, focusing on whatever weight class and game plan they're working on.
I'm always surprised how like a quarter of the guys like go dead silent and like get real quiet, and then about 3/4, like, always more than I expect, We see them out competing, and you're like, we see matchups that are potentially ADCC matchups in bracket like 2 weeks before every year. I'm like, these guys are in the same bracket and seeded where they might meet up, and they'll have a match like 2 weeks before. So it's
February, so who knows between now and
August.
August, whatever.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. But that's again huge feather in Pato's cap. Now again, 2 division. Who's number 1 champion? Anything else on the match?
Nothing.
Let's move on to the Tainan Daupra defeats Oliver Taza via decision in Tainan's second no-gi match at black belt. This went exactly how we thought it was going to go if Tainan was going to win. His game, he planned for Oliver Taza. The camp planned for Oliver Taza. They know what he did well, and Tainan was able to put him on his back, not sit in his guard in a way to let Oliver Taza get his hips involved to elevate, and just pass and repeatedly pressure Oliver Taza from the smash hip position and from the top of like a modified side control with a backup.
This was like the quintessential example on the night of a game plan that was not working for the opponent and was also not working for the rule set.
In Taza's game plan. Just,
at no point was this ever away from Tainan. On the feet, on the actual takedowns, at any point in the match. Like, there was... Taza's game plan for Tainan was not suited for this rule set, for this promotion, and it wasn't ever really in question.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot that Taza was able to get going. It was really, this is exactly, if you are Tainan Daupra and his camp and the AOJ guys, this is exactly what you wanted to see from Tainan. It's like, hey, we are going to give you a very experienced, primarily no-gi practitioner that's won trials, been to ADCC numerous times, has great leg lock game. If there's any question about your game, it's going to be in the leg locks. So we're going to give you one of the best dudes at the weight class. Again, Taza was coming up a weight class, coming up about 10 pounds, and Daupra was very visibly able to impose with the strength. But that game plan of, okay, can you deal with a guy like Oliver Taza that you know what he's going to do, and if he gets there, he can absolutely beat you. You just can never let him get there. And Tainan went, cool, I'm never going to let him get there. At any point in time, I'm never going to let him open up. I'm never going to let him get it going. Never going to let him elevate me, get underneath. At every roll through that Taza attempted to make back to the guard or back into the legs, you'd see Tainan immediately shelving, getting behind his hips, lifting Taza onto his shoulders, turning the angle, and it was just like Taza can either go to turtle, in which Tainan's going to take his back, or he can continue to make that rotary motion and end up with his guard smashed on the side, and Tainan forced him into that every time in every sequence, and it was the exact matchup that Tainan wanted to have at this point in his career, where it's like, can you stay committed and not make a single mistake with this guy the entire match? And he did not.
No, and also Taza's takedown attempts themselves were very small guy takedown attempts. Like, he kind of almost like relegated himself, knowing that I can't overpower this guy.
Yeah,
and
that was interesting as well.
Like, when he would try to get on a double, it was like he would try to like sink his hips into him and almost like pull him on top.
Right.
At no point...
We've seen Taza do that before, and he'll immediately throw into a heel hook, but it seemed like he was trying to almost like just pull him in as opposed to pull into his offense. And that might have been a strength thing. It could have been a number of different pieces, and then Tainan goes, who I can also take you down here.
Yeah.
And that was really the beginning of the end once it got to the mat. I personally have a lot more here that I
don't really think there's much more.
So here's a question that I didn't ping to you beforehand. Who do you want to see Tainan? He's at 85. Who do you want to see against him next? Who's the next guy?
It's weird because all the guys in that 85, 84 kilogram weight or
85 pound, middleweight
weight class. A lot of those, especially the bigger name guys, they're already in either in ADCC mode, or a lot of them have aged out. That's because. Like, last time it was almost like the old man's weight bracket, and now it's like, who is on the come up at middleweight, really?
Yeah, I mean, you have Couch, but I think Couch is a guy that's like, man, it's a weird matchup. Elder Cruz, Pato, but all these guys are like astonishingly at that level and like such dangerous submission threats. Like, Pedro Mourinho is a powerhouse wrestler, and then you give him like Giancarlo Bodoni. It's like ADCC champion. It's like there's Tynan now sits in this weird range because he's now beaten Oliver Taza, who is world ranked. But do you immediately now want to throw him in his third Nogi match ever into the deep end of guys that have seen Nogi world titles and seen ADCC finals and seen second days? Like, it's a weird spot to be in now where he's probably going to go the Mergali route. And it's like, yeah, man, in your third and fourth and fifth match, you're fighting with these, like guys like Craig Jones that are the top echelon. It is... I don't want to say I know he's ready for it, but man, that is kind of not how AOJ tends to bring guys up. They tend to give him a little more of an on-ramp, and I just don't really have a good guy in my head that sits out of like, yeah, that's a good matchup for him.
Philip Rowe.
Philip Rowe is on everything, so Tynan versus Philip Rowe.
Who's number 123 main event? Book it.
Next matchup, we have Adele Fornarino defeating Amanda Tubby Alequin via... basically a power total Aoki lock. It's an Aoki lock in 24 seconds. Second fastest leg lock submission. Who's number one ever? Only milliseconds behind Nikki Rod's submission over. Nikki Ryan, the wrestler kid that was on one. Who's number one ever? And then Toros I can't remember. A wrestler guy that we all kind of go, it doesn't really count, but. It absolutely counts, but it was one of those, like, it's weird to have it like a bunch of jiu-jitsu guys, and then you have your wrestler facing your jiu-jitsu guy, and like, yeah, of course it can be a fast sub. But at least that they stopped doing it after that card, which I'm happy. It's 24 seconds. She grabs the footlock, Tubby goes to turn, Del changes the angle on it, and then cranks up exactly how you finished every Aoki lock ever. The reverse estima, the power toe hold, whatever you want to call it. I think Aoki lock is what we're all calling it now.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Not much, really. It was 24 seconds, but it was almost like Tubby was so fired up going into this match that as soon as Adele sat, you see Tubby like, all right, I want to put pressure on you, but basically stands right on top of her. Like,
yeah,
essentially gives her the positioning that she wants to get the leg entanglement.
And Adele goes, cool, you're going to have to put your leg out, and then I'm going to just have the top hand over the leg and able to crank it down, where, again, super dry, super early in the match. That's always the worst time to have someone grab onto anything, because it's like, why? Because we're dry. Like, even if you were warm in the back, you've had 2-3 minutes walking out, standing there, the match is going to start. You've had a couple minutes to cool down. It's going to take you 30 or 45 seconds to get that sweat going again. In those first 30 seconds, you're dry. That's it. That's the match. Again, super happy to see Adele win this one here because I want to see more of her game. I think she has a really interesting game. I think she's very much on the come up, and I'm very curious who they put her on. Again, I would have loved to see more women on the card. This was supposed to be a matchup with Fionn. I think potentially
you can rebook that one.
I would you book Fionn versus Adele now because it was
1,000%. Yes,
it was supposed to be Fionn versus Tubby. Unfortunately, I think now you make it Adele versus Fionn.
That's how matchmaking works.
How matchmaking works in fighting. So that's a match I want to see. Again, super impressive performance from Adele. So moving on to the People's Champ, Jacob Couch defeats. I lost my place here. Sebastian Rodriguez via heel hook in what? A minute 34?
Almost 90 seconds exactly.
Yeah.
They called it a minute and a half on the broadcast. Yeah.
That's kind of...
It was sweet.
I called it. In the Grappling Line chat, I went, called it. This is kind of what we thought was gonna potentially happen. If Jacob Couch was gonna win impressively, like, go back and watch Jacob Couch in the finals of ADCC East Coast Trials versus Elder Cruz. Then go back and watch this match. They're kind of the same thing. And entry's a little bit different, but very, very similar. Sebastian Rodriguez was able to fight the heel hook a little longer. Jacob Couch, the way he gets Rodriguez over was really interesting because you could see just how much of a powerhouse Couch is. He just inverts under kind of, and then he just has Rodriguez's leg and just does like a curl and a press with the leg, and is able to flip Sebastian Rodriguez over and get the leg.
Well, commentary called it a knee bar attempt, but it almost seemed like he was just climbing down the leg to get to the heel itself.
It is traditionally a way that you would do a knee bar entry, but because of the way that Couch keeps his hips at, he ends up in a heel hook position as opposed to, like when I do this, it ends up in a knee bar. But when Couch does it, he makes this side angle with hips because he's slightly higher up and he's more supported in the lower back because he can do that, and his shoulder. So he ends up at an off angle to the side in a position to immediately wrap for the heel hook here, and he's amazing at it. And so it's really interesting to use this entry like that because early in the match, Rodriguez is still like super strong. He's not tired yet. The power of Couch to get Rodriguez over in this position is pretty phenomenal because you see Rodriguez start to kind of sprawl down out of it, and it doesn't matter. Most people, when they grab your leg in this position, you end up getting folded and you get your leg, the guy pulls his leg out and passes. For Couch to be able to do this, it really just shows you where it's like, oh, he's got that farm strength. He's got that like strength and condition. He's had a nutritionist now. Like, Jacob Couch is not the same dude he was a couple of years ago when he kind of first burst on the scene. Yeah, dude is strong.
Also, technique-wise, you do see when he's like briefly inverted for a second, he switches his grip up, and that's actually the beginning of the finishing sequence where he's like, oh, okay, now I've got you.
Yeah, the grip switch was really nice. And the camera was on a really great place for the grip switch. You saw Couch go up, and then you saw all the power because he digs under again with the grip. You see Rodriguez trying to open the knee line here, but Couch at no point ever adjusts his hip position or his leg position at all. He only adjusts the hand position, and because Rodriguez's leg can't move at all in the bite, there's no place to go.
Oh, yeah, he was triangling his thigh at that point.
Yeah,
like he was just waiting for, once he switched that grip up, he got the exact sequence of moves that he wanted to get the finish. Yeah. It was done at that point.
Couch is great. That is the entirety of the match. It was very, very impressive from Jacob Couch. I think he talked about on the post-fight. Couch thing is the only post-fight. I tend to sometimes listen to post-fights. This week, I was just not down to listen to post-fights. Couch is the one post-fight I listen to because I love that dude. And he talked about, I think he has had more matches on Who's Number One than anyone else.
I mean, that makes sense.
And I was like, good for you, Jacob Couch.
I had to look up when he
put you higher
Jordan.
up.
That was like 10 Who's Number Ones ago.
Dude, crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, put him higher up on the card. I love that dude. I would love to see him. I don't know who I want to see him against, but put him on every card, man. That dude's awesome. He's getting better and better. He's just improved his technique. We see him like...
You briefly said Tynan earlier. Was there a motive behind that, or is it just a natural progression of, okay, you guys both
It's a weight class thing.
Yeah.
I hate to hit your two prospects like that early. The more I think about it, the more I kind of think that's a really... I hate early prospect jiu-jitsu matches. Like, I think Couch is not really a prospect anymore because now he has that trials win, but it's also... He wasn't able to make it to ADCC during the last run, so this is the first time he's in it, and so you're in that like new man coming into ADCC prospect. It's your first It's the first time you've proved you're on the level and can make the world tournament. And Tynan is the guy who has literally had 2 black belt no-gi matches. It seems weird to put them together. I kind of think it might be the match to make up though, especially with both guys on the same card, both guys having commanding performances over good opposition. Yeah, I think it'll be... Again, you could potentially put Sebastian Rodriguez versus Tynan, but again, a guy coming off a loss. It's always weird matchmaking. It matters less in jiu-jitsu because by the time the next Who's Number One runs around, these guys are probably going to have 4 or 8 more matches between whatever tournament they decide to do. But
I forgot, have we seen Couch versus Bodoni yet?
That would be fun.
I kind of want to see Couch against a new wave guy.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Couch versus Taza would be fun too. But I think Taza's too small though. Like Taza, I went up to 85 here, and Taza that's as big as Taza gets. I think Taza is more comfortable at like 65, 70, and I think Couch is cutting hard to make 85. So I don't think I'm not as interested in that match. But I think Daupor is pretty comfortable at 85. It would be a fun match, but I think the stylistic between Couch and, because we've seen him against Gordon, a new wave guy, but another new wave guy.
That was 10 Who's Number Ones ago.
That was a long time. It was a long time ago. It would be interesting. So, anything else on that?
No, Couch is a monster. Can't
Yeah.
wait to see him. At
Yep.
what point this year do we stop caring about super fights and start focusing on ADCC? Because
Unfortunately, usually like 2 weeks before. I care right up into the end.
yeah,
This is the only sport I follow nowadays. Like, you follow MMA still, and I ping you on MMA stuff nowadays. But we used to follow MMA. Now I just follow grappling, and so it's like I care about all of them, Simon.
it's like it's February. At what point can you, like you were saying, put the
August
two young
15th.
prospects together? To be perfectly honest, I like seeing the two young prospects going at each other early,
Yeah.
so that later when you see them in these high stakes matchups,
In the
you're like,
rematch, they had a match early, the first year of
Yeah.
black belt. Yeah, it builds the narrative for later in the career. But
Yep.
I kind of The more I think about it, the more I kind of want to see that matchup. I'm concerned that we may see a more stifling performance from Daupra, and I love watching Couch open up. But we've seen Couch make guys open up, and I think it would be a fun matchup. So let's talk about the preliminary card. They separated out between main card and preliminary card. All the matchups, honestly, across the entire card were very, very good. Elijah Dorsey defeats Ivan Herrera via a really interesting shoulder lock from behind. This has a name. They've called it shoulder lock on all the broadcasts, and I've blanked for like the past 3 days trying to remember what the actual name of the submission is. It's a submission where you put the arm across the top of their head. It's not a mirror lock, but there is an actual name for this. Famously, Aljamain Sterling did it to Brian Caraway, where he had both arms behind him in their matchup in the UFC, and almost got the submission via that. That has a different name.
Well, he had Caraway on a full Nelson.
Yeah, but he had the arms crossed on top of it, so he had arms
Yeah.
behind him. And up. And so this is basically just a modified Americana from the top. When you defend a certain way, Ivan defended the back take a certain way. He went to reach over, which is a great defense, but Dorsey is very, very crafty, and so took that and then shoulder locked him off of that. I think they'll have Dorsey on the main card. Again, he won trials.
Yep.
We're going to see him. I think this puts him with a submission in the Who's Number One roster, and they're going to continue to push him up the card, as they should with a submission like this. We had a big upset. Daniel Sattler
There you go.
defeats Max Hansen via armbar. This was way quicker. This is unexpected. Again, I wasn't super familiar with Daniel's game going into this, but Max Hansen in the guard was taking kind of a high knee up forward approach, and there is a reason why early in your career you kind of teach guys, hey, don't reach in the guard, but don't reach in the guard. Usually when you get to the higher levels, guys are so good it doesn't really matter as much because there's so much additional craft to like things that you can do if they try to like counter you, unless you're going to have a guy like Daniel that can jump a flying armbar over your guard. We've seen it with GSP and Davi Ramos. We've seen it like so many guys, Francisco Lowe, that at the black belt level, the don't reach thing is like, it's fine unless you have a guy that's going to jump a flying armbar or a triangle over your guard. And that's exactly what Daniel does here over Max Hansen.
I have nothing else to add.
Yeah. Again, unfortunately, I love seeing Max Hansen. It's really cool. Again, I love highlight reel submissions too. I think this will absolutely put Sattler on another Who's Number One. Super impressive performance to hunt the submission, to be willing to kind of like, to jump a flying armbar over someone's guard on a very slight reach and overextension. Really says a lot about the confidence that you have in your submission game, and for his ability to actually get it on the first go and the first jump is interesting. I think we're going to see a lot more from him. We know how good Max Hansen is. Basically, we said last week, the Thanos of the regional belts. Him having pretty much 55 and 70 across most of the country's regional organizations. Yeah, Daniel Sattler's big win over Max Hansen via highlight reel submission flying armbar. We also had Ashley Frangetta defeating Marilyn Cruz via decision. Really, really great positional dominance and passing from Ashley. Very, very clean decision. Not a ton in the way of submission offense throughout the match, but just very, very stifling top pressure overall. Anything else?
No.
On the last match on the card, we have Dory Oren defeating Kyle Chambers via decision. This was very, very close, and there is a strong argument made for Chambers. I think Dory wins this match in the last minute and a half for his back take, and then sort of submission, and then he has one other like toe hold submission attempt here. late in the match, versus Chambers throughout the match had a lot of work from the rubber guard, work from the closed guard, but didn't really have anything super deep. He had a lot of like 10th Planet traditional guard work, setting up submissions, but nothing that was ever really deep. The toe hold and the back take were both very good for Dory. This was definitely a very close decision. This is sort of like, I'm not sure exactly how Who's Number One does decisions. My only thought would be those two sequences at the end were the deciding factor, but it was a very close match.
Yeah, my question was, like, with these stylistic matchups under the Who's, and obviously if you don't know the exact criteria for each scoring like subset after submission attempts, it goes to blank. That 10th Planet style, though, can that really be advantageous in this rule set, though?
I think it can.
If you're just getting pressured, but you're in rubber guard, but...
Yeah, I think it can if that's all that happened. I think had those last sequences not happen, I think Chambers takes a clean decision here over this. But the problem is, once someone gets past that and starts throwing up more traditional offensive, like, I am breaking your front. I am in the process of like doing traditionally having your back and forcing you to defend the back take. If you look at some of the more traditional like 10th Planet open rubber guard and like those sort of guards and the Gogo Plata attempts, like those things, in the modern game we see those finished so infrequently, and a lot of times it's just adjustments from the passer to like get out of those, and not really, they're just adjusting how they're passing. They're not necessarily defending a submission. I think we are seeing that be less and less of a viable strategy from a judging perspective than we used to in the past. But I think that's not necessarily because the techniques are less effective. It's because the counters to them are more known and better. And so it's like we're seeing athletes not get themselves into as much trouble at the higher levels dealing with those techniques from the open guard. And so as a result, the judges are going, yeah, well, he's not really worried about that. He's just sort of changing how he's passing. He's not really just defending and pulling out and then coming back in. And I think that potentially is an interesting transition that we're seeing now. It's like you have to really, from those positions, be forcing someone to only defend the submission and not just change their passing approach. So yeah, it was very close. I think you can definitely make an argument for either guy to take this. But it makes me realize that I probably need to go back and read through some of the documentation on Who's Number One's judging criteria. Because again, I could see this either way, and I went, I need to be better informed about why Dory wins this. If it is in fact the correct decision. So that was the Who's Number One card. Overall thoughts, I thought it was actually a really good card. I will say it. I will say it again. I think 2.5 hours for a jiu-jitsu card is the perfect amount of time. I think this was a little longer than that, but at no point was it like egregious. I wish that they didn't have the time until next match. You had a lot of subs. I give the guys a couple minutes, but then put them back on. Shorter jiu-jitsu cards are better. Everyone likes get in, get out. That 8 p.m. start time, East Coast, is rough on a Friday. Like, hey man, start this so it's like start at 6 p.m. or even 7 p.m. Gets a little late, but I can deal with it. 8 and 9 p.m. main card. It's like
too much.
It's too late. Like, again, if it's only going to be 2.5 hours, we're good to start at like 8, 10:30.
Hey, it's better than no time limit matches at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. You go 2.5 hours over.
They learned that one.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, I thought it was really great. I wish that we had a couple more closer camera angles. They kept using that like camera from the stands a lot, and
that like straight up one also. With
a
really bad camera.
I love the camera.
It was a bad camera.
It wasn't a good
looked
camera.
like somebody's webcam from 2004.
I love the overhead camera, and I think I'm the only person on Grappling Rewind that likes that overhead camera shot.
I think that's very revealing about you, but okay, continue.
I love that camera shot. Quintet uses it a ton. I love it every time. Polaris uses it. Everyone else on the team doesn't like it. But yeah, I wish some of the video quality in that far away camera was like hazy, and it looked like it was way in the bleachers, and it wasn't able to deal with that distance with the fog in the arena. And so I wish that they would have a couple more better cameras.
Or less fog in the arena.
Less fog in the arena, and like a little better lighting. Like, and we kind of talk about it every time. Make it a little brighter. But overall, the matchups and like this is I would watch a Who's Number One card like this every week and be happy to do so. Like, this is the kind of cards I want to see.
Yeah,
so.
This is akin to a modern-day MMA fight night. Like, all right, I know the top 2 guys. The co-main event's going to be 2 really exciting younger guys, and then
you
everyone
round
else,
out with
the hardcores know and will enjoy their matches.
Yeah.
But after that, it's none of the legends are on this card necessarily, but
right.
every matchup on this card basically produced, especially the main card, produced either a really exciting finish or a great tactical matchup between 2 even competitors.
I think Flo really nailed it on this one. And again, I would love to see these be a little more frequent. I think the next one is it May 10th?
I couldn't even tell you, man.
Yeah, I think it's a little further out than I would like. But again, I would love to see them run one of these, like, at least once a month. Give me one a month, like, I'll be pretty happy. Because the match, they figured out how to run them, and they run very well. And so I'm amped for the next one. Let's move on. So that does it for Who's Number One. Just the hour mark into the show. Let's talk about the final ADCC European qualifier for ADCC. So this is the European, Middle Eastern, and African qualifier for ADCC. We've already had one of them. This is the second one. This is the only women's qualifier for the region, so it's really exciting because we have some of the top women in the region coming out. It's taking place in Zagreb, Croatia. Flo has a really good breakdown of some of the top names in it. I'm going to read through them. Simon, you want to stop me at any point, interject, go for it, but I'm going to run through them. Good?
Cool.
Men's 66, we have former trials winner Ash Williams and Sam McNally both in this bracket. We have Garabek Imamov, we have Cameron Donnelly, we have Jack Sear, Camille Wilk, and Sam Gibbs. Those are the names offhand that I know. Flo has some other guys listed. I would expect, based on previous history, Sam McNally or Ash Williams to take this.
It's their bracket to lose.
It's their bracket to lose. I really think Ash... I think we see Ash take this. He's just looked phenomenal as of recently. I think we see him take under 66. Under 77 is a monster murderer's row. We have Tommy Langacker, former winner, Mateusz Szynski, former winner, Oliver Taza, former winner, Tarek Hopstock, Davis Arce, Thomas Berry, and Jabek Najek. Davis Arce is a 10th planet guy that we were supposed to see on the last trials. We were always really curious about what he was going to do. He's looked really good. He's made a bunch of improvements since the last trials where he was injured. Very excited to see how he lines up in this. We've seen him at a bunch of the ADCC Opens. Like, he is my big dark horse for this. But again, you've got to get past
Taza and Langacker.
Taza, Szynski, Langacker, and Hopstock. Like, those are 4 guys that are going to be on the opposite corners of those bracket. You have multiple winners that have been there and done that before, been to the World Championships, have wins in the World Championships. Like, this is going to be a really, really exciting bracket. Mateusz Szynski is going to break someone's foot. So tune into his matches if you want to see that. It'll be this. I'm super excited for 77. Under 88 kilograms, we got Adam Wardzinski, former trials winner, Chris Wojcik. We have Mazan Arabeb. We have Taylor Perlman, and we have Omar I can never get Omar's last name. Or Orman. Emanoel. Emanole. I think it's that. I'm not a good speller, Simon. Again,
or pronouncer.
Even after 326 numbered episodes and almost 350 total.
Quick, say my last name.
I have to marry him.
Oh, okay, never mind.
We've been friends for like 8 years.
Still.
Again, Adam has finally figured out how to beat Felipe Andrew. And I love Adam Wardzinski's game as a fellow butterfly guard guy. I'm going Adam Wardzinski here, but again, men's 88 is always just wildly difficult for everyone. We've seen Adam a lot more in the gi recently, but he frequently takes off this, does trials, wins trials. It wouldn't surprise me to see him do it here again. Men's 99, a bit of a smaller division. We have Miraz Abdevan. Pedro Toponen again is in here, former winner. Amir is in here, and you have Daniel Laredo is also in here. Look for big things from Daniel Laredo. He has been killing it over there in Europe for a little bit now. And then, again, Toponen's also a former winner. So
not a lot of big guys over in Europe, Africa, East Asia, huh?
Maybe not. Interesting, though. So, again, this is not – we just have the flow list of the guys that Flow is selected.
Yeah,
but Interesting enough, we have Jed Hugh at plus 99 and Frederic Voscob, Freddie. He's come to Baltimore BJJ a couple of times. We've seen him in the area. Been on Polaris. Big, long, like blonde hair and a red singlet. That's Frederic Vosgrove. I texted the guys in the chat. I don't think Jed Hugh is plus 99. I didn't think he was that big. But again, if the division is kind of smaller, might make sense to jump in. We've seen plenty of guys do it before as like, hey, I like the way that bracket looks. I'll go up a weight class and do that, or not cut weight and do that. We've seen it be successful for many guys in the past. It'd be fun to see Jed and Freddie go at it. I think they've gone at it before, but I'm looking forward to that matchup.
If you're not a big name on the scene necessarily, and you win trials at a weight class, can you switch weight classes before Mundials?
No. So it's not Mundials. It's World Championships. They don't call it the Mundials. Mundials is IBJJF GI Worlds. That's Mundials. Worlds.
They have definitely called ADCC World Championships Mundials before. They haven't called it the Mundials. They've called it ADCC Mundials.
Maybe. I don't remember. I've called this, but
I'm gonna look it up after the show. I'm gonna shove it in your face.
That's fine. No. So specifically, if you are a trials winner, you are required to do it at your weight class, unless you can get someone to swap with you, and you can put in for like a change. But like you are basically the last in the pecking order of that. So like Isaac and Craig switched because Craig was willing to make the switch for him. But if you are a trials winner, you do it at the weight class that you win trials at.
Got it.
And so that comes up occasionally with like younger guys winning trials, and then 6-8 months later, like, hey man, enjoy making that cut to 66, my guy, and coming back down. We have the divisions I'm super excited for. The women's divisions, the first and only qualifier for the European, African, and Middle Eastern trials. Women's under 55 kilos. We have Margaret Cicerelli in here, Julia Maylee, former winner. We also have Josephine Modig. We have Ashley Bendel as well in that bracket. That will be super fun. I think seeing Margaret or Julia Maylee in that and Ashley Bendel, I think those are going to be your corners there.
Yep.
One of those ladies, I think, is going to take that championship home at women's under 55. Women's over 65, we have Rocha Walsh, Theon's black belt, who's been killing it over at Grapple Fest and on the Polaris and on a bunch of other cards. I think she had Polaris submission of the night a couple of cards ago. Super excited to see her. We have Anna Svedsten, very good grappler as well. Nora Schultz is on there as well. I think that is, I could be incorrect. That may be Cody Steele's girlfriend.
Oh.
But I could be having the wrong. I'm potentially getting the Noras wrong there. Apologies if I have. That'll be a fun bracket for women 65 kilos. Above 65 kilos, we have Nina Blackman. We have Muriel Miliesic. We have Hannah Griffith, who is Luke Griffith's younger sister. Who got injured last time, and she couldn't do the last trial. She broke her leg or her leg. She was in like a brace. Now she's back in. I'm really curious to see how she looks. We've seen her a little bit, but I don't know that much about her game. I've been impressed with the pieces that I have seen, but really excited to see her at above 65 kilos. And we also have Jessica Tortilla and Sala Samola
there you go.
as well in that bracket. So should be a lot of fun. I love watching ADCC trials, and so I cannot wait to break these down next week. Any thoughts, Simon?
If Fionn wasn't injured, do you think she would be in these trials?
No, she's the champion.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever had. I don't know if you can.
Didn't Gordon do it?
Gordon talked about doing it. He was like, "Hey, if I win, can I take a slot from a guy?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's crazy." Put him in the bracket twice, and they were like, "No, Gordon, you can't do that." And he was like, "Oh, I thought they were gonna ask." And then he ended up doing 2 divisions anyway.
It's just weird to see a European grappling event featuring women
without Fionn is not in it. Yeah,
it
is crazy. You're like, and then Fionn Davis, oh wait, she's the champion. She's not gonna be in there. But yeah, it should be. Again, I love the trials. The European trials are always wild because, again, we are a United States-based show, and so typically we have a much easier time covering the U.S.-based events. It's an awesome opportunity for us to kind of foray into the phenomenal scene that is the rest of that, that chunk of the world, Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, and so it gives us a chance to see the collection of grapplers over there.
The Middle East is Asia. It's okay, mate.
It's both.
It's East Asia.
Yeah, but it's in this trials. It is in this trials.
Oh, okay.
So looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun. Other than that, let me look. We have pit fighting in 2 weeks. I think that next week that we're for sure covering trials. That would be the lion's share of the show. We also have Grappling in the Temple is next week, and those are the two big events that are going to be coming up. We'll probably focus mostly on ADCC trials. So that does it for this week, Simon. You got anything else going on fun this week?
No fun whatsoever. My kids are sick, my allergies are going crazy, and I work in a restaurant, so you won't see me again for like another 3 months.
That's usually how it goes with you filling in for Grappling Around. Good to have you. It's good to have you on, though.
I may or may not be a drastically different weight the next time you see me. Also, that happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
We're doing promotions tomorrow for one of the guys at the gym because everything got mucked up last semester for the club, so it's cool. That'd be exciting. Other than that, just standard week of training, getting back into it from commentating the big events for Copa is always it's always a ton of fun, but it is a lot of work on the back end to get everything lined up and perfect so that we can go and do a good show for those guys down there. And so I'm ready to just get back to my training. And guys are done with ADCC, the Open, so maybe training will kind of kick down for a second, and then it'll ramp back up as we get closer to trials. I think we have a couple of folks that are going out to the West Coast trials that are going to be happening in literally just like 45 days from now, end of March. So it should be a ton of fun. I am looking forward to that. I'm trying to not have everyone around me get sick. I'm hoping. Easier
said than done, my friend. Well, you don't have kids, so you're fine.
I don't have kids, and it's great. My wife and I both work at home, so it's great. But I'm going to do some more field work coming up soon.
Well, but then she goes and teaches a whole bunch of kids.
She does, and your kids, and so
yeah.
It'll be good. But I got nothing else. Simon, you got anything else?
No, I just got to go blow my nose.
As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Simon.
And we are the Grappling Around to the mat, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.